Hello, and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve, and with the FA Cup 5th round fixtures now complete, we know the state of play for game week 29, which will be a massive blank for pretty much all the key teams of assets that are floating around in our squads. Now, I said last week that I was committing to a free hit in game week 29, assuming there were pretty much no upsets in the FA Cup, and with no upsets coming through, there is pretty much no need to pivot away from this plan. So my current moves from this week forward, as they were last week, do not need to consider any moves for game week 29's big blank, as I will be free hitting in that game week. And I've got a free hit team to briefly go through for you, those of you who are interested in this video. It's a pretty obvious free hit team, to be fair, with not too many decisions to make. So we'll go through that pretty quickly with a couple of advantages and disadvantages of this strategy. Now, for game week 27, I've currently got Porro with an orange flag, Solanke with a yellow flag, missing out on the FA Cup tie completely midweek. Bruyne in my squad, who only managed 6 minutes off the bench in game week 26, and I have one free transfer and 4.0 million sitting in the bank for game week 27. So before we get started, if you like the following content, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So we'll start off with free hit 29, as now that we know which teams are playing and which ones aren't. In fact, if I just go forward, well, let's just bring up the fixture ticket. Now, please ignore the game week 34 blanks and doubles on screen. I'm still working through that in the background, and with the latest updates to the fixtures, I haven't quite put in the logic to figure out who's playing where at the moment. But leading up until that point, the fixture ticket is correct. So as of game week 29, this is just sorted by game week 29 with the best teams at the top and obviously all the teams that blank at the bottom. You can see that Brentford, Spurs, Villa will probably be the key teams that most will target. West Ham's in there as well, with maybe a little bit of potential investment in Forest, Luton, and maybe Fulham. So I've built a free hit team for game week 29, and just quickly, it's mostly anyone who's free hitting in game week 29 will probably have triple Spurs as they play Fulham away, triple Villa as they play West Ham away and are attacking pretty well, triple Brentford, who are away to Burnley, so it's one of the best games on paper, and then it kind of consists of a couple of West Ham players, Nottingham Forest, and maybe Fulham and Luton on the bench. So what I've gone with here for my triple Spurs, which I think is probably the easiest, is I've gone with 2 in attack of Son and Maddison. Now you could look to fit in Richarlison alongside here and forego someone like Porro or Udogie in defense and just triple up on the attack there. But I'm not too sure about bringing Richarlison in. Like, he is probably going to be a 60 to 70 minute man moving forward, assuming there are no other injuries in the Spurs camp. And I do not entirely rate his finishing. I'd probably prefer to have the likes of Bowen or Douglas Luiz or Kudos in there as opposed to Richarlison, but Richarlison is obviously a fine choice if you are a Richarlison fan. This team also has 9 million in the bank, so you can basically buy any players in game week 29 as you see fit. My triple Villa is Watkins up front. Every team's going to have Watkins. Douglas Luiz in midfield. He is the pen taker. Actually got a massive haul in game week 26. I think those returns all came from open play as well. And then maybe a Moreno or a Cash in defense. I've currently got Moreno down here. This is just a tentative free hit. Obviously, we will need to see what the minutes are looking like as we near or get closer to game week 29. I've then got triple Brentford, where we go Tony up front. He's basically just a lock, as he'll be away to Burnley on pens, on most of the set pieces, 90 minutes, great open play threat, great player. And then a double defense from Brentford against Burnley away. Reguilón comes with probably the most attacking threat, and I've gone with Flecken in net. You'll see that my keeper on the bench is Sals, who is probably the second best keeper that I can see in game week 29. So that's the core of the team: triple Spurs, triple Villa, triple Brentford, and then it's basically play 2 players out of Bowen, Kudos, and Awani, either in a 3-5-2 or some sort of 3-4-3 formation. And then the last 2 defenders on the bench, of Castagna from Fulham, as he's got some relatively good attacking threat, and Doughty from Luton, as he also comes with relatively good attacking threat. Neither are likely to keep clean sheets, though. In fact, if you have been following the channel for a while, I haven't really been focusing on buying any clean sheet players. I'm basically just looking for defenders with attacking threat, as the clean sheets are pretty much non-existent this season. And I have a fair idea that it's probably to do with the additional amount of extra time that teams are having to play with the rule changes. Now, if you caught the video last week, there was, who was it? I can't actually remember who it was now, but came on in the 44th minute. FPL actually only awarded him 46 minutes of game time played. Who was it? Let's just go have a look here. Oh, it was the week previous, wasn't it? Was it Salah the week previous? Yeah, Salah awarded with 46 minutes, sorry, in game week 25. He came on in the 44th minute, but he actually ended up playing 15 minutes of stoppage time, 7 minutes in the first half and 8 minutes in the second half, or vice versa, which is a lot of time to be playing in stoppage time in a football match. That's a third of a half. So for any of you out there who actually do play football, your pre-season games, you'll quite often play in thirds. So it'll be like 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, and then a half-time break, and then 15, 15, 15, just to kind of get a bit of a breakdown. But 15 minutes of stoppage time is a lot of stoppage time. Players get a lot more tired when you're playing all this additional time, and I think it's just affecting the clean sheets across the park. So anyway, I've gone on a bit of a tangent there. So the advantages of free hitting in game week 29 are that I get to hold the core of my team, of which most players will blank. So if I just reset this out of the free hit team, as I've kind of shown it, and roll forward to game week 29, you can see that the only players that I currently have playing at the moment is Watkins, Porro, who's injured, and Turner, who's lost his spot. Everyone else in my team blanks. And so I can hold the core of my team through game week 29, and all of these players, because they blank in game week 29, will then have a double game week to fit in past game week 29, most likely falling in game week 34, but could also fall in game weeks 35 or 36, and if not then the rest will fall into game week 37. And so I get to hold on to the prices which I bought all my key players for. So I get to lock in, keep keep Haaland's price, keep Palmer's price, keep Saka's price. I don't have to sell these players and buy them back for a more expensive price in future. And so it's pretty much just an easy free hit in game week 29, and the free hit team is pretty strong with some pretty good players in there, likes of, Tony, Bowen, Kudos. These are all great players potentially for a 1 week play that you don't necessarily want to hold in your team long term. So that's what the free hit 29 is shaping up like. So we'll get back into my moves for game week 27. So do I play Kevin De Bruyne one more time? So if you caught the video last week, I was happy to roll the dice on De Bruyne. So my options last week were to either sell De Bruyne or sell Salah in order to bring in a 1 week play of Garnacho last week. I opted to sell Salah as he was injured and didn't have a game last week, and was hoping that De Bruyne would come in off the bench for about 20 to 30 minutes at the end of the game. Now, as it turns out, holding on to De Bruyne was the correct move, even though he only scored 0 points in the game week, as part of my reasoning behind selling Salah was that he was injured and we weren't too sure when he was going to come back. Now, Salah has missed both the Carabao Cup final this week and the FA Cup 5th round tie. So I am thankful that I now do not have the headache of wondering if he's going to play in game week 27 through this injury. But unfortunately, De Bruyne last week only managed 6 minutes at the end of the match, and in that time he managed to kick the ball away to slow down the play, as it was actually only a 1-0 victory in the end for Man City, earning himself a yellow card and picking up a 0-pointer as a result. Now, he did have a massive chance at the end of that fixture in the 6 minutes plus stoppage time in which he was on the pitch, but he got it all wrong and unfortunately didn't even really take the shot. So I don't even think that probably would have gone down as an expected stat. Nah, it didn't. 0.01, not even registering on the expected stats, but had he pulled the trigger, that would have been a pretty big expected goal. Now, to rub salt into the wound, really, I suppose, De Bruyne did start in the FA Cup match midweek against Luton, played the full 90 minutes, and got 4 assists for 4 of Haaland's 5 goals in that match. Now, he played amazing in that Luton fixture. He was often running in as basically the second striker if City were playing 2 up front. He was all over the pitch, involved in everything, and it's going to show exactly the quality of player De Bruyne is. It is just incredibly frustrating that he didn't get 20 to 30 minutes in that Bournemouth fixture, in which he could have run a little bit rampant as what he did in that Luton fixture. So what do I do with De Bruyne this week as he comes up against a defensively terrible United team that have now also sustained some further injuries in defence, making their defensive prospects that much more worse. More worse? I don't even know if that's grammatically correct there, but I'll read out a couple of my fixture notes from the United fixture in the game which they lost at the weekend against Fulham. So in the 18th minute, great move by Fulham. These are just brain dumps as the fixture is being played, and I do not go back and reword them before I read them out to you guys. It's just straight as the game was being played. So great move by Fulham. However, Maguire comes way out of position. This is in the 18th minute. Attempts a tackle he's never going to get, which takes him out of any chance of getting back to defend, leaving a massive hole for Fulham to exploit. Great diverting run by Muniz to create space for Iwobi, but Iwobi's body shape is all wrong for the shot he selects given the angle of approach to goal. He needs to take it across his body and use his left foot, or cut back slightly for his right to take the shot on. So that's just Maguire. He does this often. He just comes out of defense, going in for a tackle that he's just never going to get to, and just completely misses it, create holes. He's too slow to get back, and it's like a brain bomb goes off in his mind. He just does it quite often. It's uber frustrating. Now, Maguire is injured and may not be playing this weekend, but even if he is back fit and ready, this is something that Man City will absolutely destroy if he is on the pitch and goes and does that. Now, elsewhere in the defensive line, in the 57th minute of the match, Dalot loses the ball directly from the throw-in in an extremely dangerous area. Fulham gets 6 men forward with only 4 of United back, with the rest of the team scampering to get back, given the way in which Dalot lost the ball. A wayward cross from Fulham sees the chance lost, but that could have been a huge chance if the ball was accurate, or if he chose to shoot instead. Now, again, these won't go down in your expected stats because the cross never hit the mark and there was no shot taken. But these are really, really big attacking chances that United are conceding if there is a bit more clinicality to the team they were up against. Again, Man City are way more clinical than the likes of Fulham. And then my final match note that I've selected here is in the 8th minute of stoppage time, at the end of the 90. Dalot, what is that touch? You've had a horrible game, giving the ball away way too often during the attack. You've got so much time there too. Now, Man City are going to exploit the hell out of this weekend against Manchester United. As I mentioned, there are a few more injuries in defence as well, and so we probably will even be selecting out of some of the youth squads in order to come up against this rampant attack. And so, do I play De Bruyne one more time as a result? So, De Bruyne will have had a full 4 days rest before the United fixture from that Luton match that was played midweek, which is more than enough time for him to recover and potentially start against United. However, the second leg of the Champions League is just 2 days rest after the United game, which complicates matters. Now, if this Champions League fixture was not in this game week, I think De Bruyne just starts against United and plays the full 90 minutes. Now, Man City are up 3-1 on aggregate for that Copenhagen fixture in the Champions League, so they are comfortably cruising in that and may not need to play their strongest side, which I believe De Bruyne is a part of. But either way, whatever I do in game week 27, I will be selling De Bruyne in game week 28 if I decide to hold him for this United fixture, as I'll be looking to buy Son and Salah back into my squad. So this really is only a 1 week play. Now, if I do decide to sell De Bruyne, Son is the obvious candidate to replace him. He has a great run of fixtures. Son here is nailed on pens, plays in game week 29. Now, not that I myself am actually focusing on that, as I'll be free hitting this week, But for all of those managers out there that are building towards game week 29, Son is just a foregone conclusion that he will be invested into, and so his price is likely to rise as a result of heavy investment from the rest of the managers in the game. And Son plays Crystal Palace at home this weekend, which is a pretty good attacking fixture for someone like Son Heung-min. So these are my options. However, my particular predicament is that I am going to need to move some funds out of defense in order to accommodate Salah and Son into this team over the next few game weeks. So I do have 4 million in the bank, but because De Bruyne lost 0.1 million of value across this game week, I do not have enough money to bring in Salah and Son alongside Palmer, Saka, Haaland and Watkins, and so I do need to get some funds out of defence. And my keen team to target is a Bournemouth defender who are playing Burnley this week and have the double in game week 29. So I am currently favouring this move as my one free transfer this week. So if I was to sell De Bruyne to Son this week, it would be for a hit. So this is what I'm weighing up in my mind. Now, given the upside that's on offer here, if De Bruyne does indeed start the match, or even if he does play the last 30 minutes of the match against United, I don't think I can sell him for a hit, given how badly I think Manchester City are going to destroy United this weekend. So the fear, of course, is that he gets another 5 to 6 minutes off the bench at the close of the match. But I think this is probably a lot less likely to happen, given that it is a derby match. The title race is still up for grabs. It is relatively close. They can't drop any points. And so what I think Pep will probably do here is, yes, United is weakened, and he could start with a much weakened Man City side and get through the match probably unscathed. But if he does start with a weakened Man City side and manages to draw or lose the game somehow, miraculously, there will be questions put towards him. And so what I think will probably happen is Pep starts probably his strongest side against United, tries to get up 2-3-0 within the first 50 to 60 minutes of the match, and then subs off all of his key players, or those key players that, probably not Haaland. I doubt Haaland would get subbed off until about the 70 to 80 minute, as he does not need to do a hell of a lot of running, and so there's not much fitness concerns with Haaland. But someone like De Bruyne could get subbed off about this 50, 60, 70 minute mark if they're up 2-3-0 in order to preserve him for that Copenhagen match, which they are cruising in. But again, I think he'll probably follow a similar sort of strategy of start your strongest team in that Copenhagen match, score a goal or two, you'll be up 4-1 or 5-1 on aggregate, and then sub off your best players in order to re-preserve them for the league, as you will have advanced through the Champions League fixture. So, given all of this, I think the most likely outcome here is that De Bruyne starts against United, plays 60 to 90 minutes, in which case I think he could come away with an absolute monster haul this weekend. And so I do need to roll the dice one more time on De Bruyne for game week 27. So, time for a defensive transfer. Now, if you've been following the channel for a little bit, you'll know that I've basically given up on defensive clean sheets, as very few teams keep to be keeping cleans, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, as to my thoughts on the reasons why. So as such, I haven't actually made any defensive transfers in my team for quite some time. In fact, this is the exact 5 defensive players that I brought in on my wildcard in game week 19. So as I mentioned, I do need to move some funds out of defense this week in order to accommodate the attacking lineup that I want to go with moving forward, and I am targeting Bournemouth as my defensive transfer this week. Now Burnley last week did go down to 10 men, so they'll also be carrying a suspension to one of their key midfielders in Brownhill this week. Now Burnley aren't the best attacking team at the best of times, and without one of their key starters, it does diminish their attacking threat even further. And so I am now looking at the prospects of buying one of 2 players. Now Senesi is my preferred target, as he still comes with attacking threat. I have actually owned Senesi a little bit earlier in the season, and is about as nailed as you can get in that Bournemouth defensive team. But it should be noted that Senesi is currently on 8 yellow cards, and if he receives 2 more yellow cards, he'll receive a 2-match ban, which would be pretty unlucky if I was to bring in Senesi this week, and if he got a yellow card in the Burnley match and then a yellow card in the first fixture of the double, he would be suspended for the second game of the double, and then the fixture in game week 29. Now, if I wasn't to go for Senesi to avoid the risk of the 8 yellow card situation, then Zabani would probably be the player that I go for, as he is about as nailed as it can get and has no suspensions looming. But his attacking threat is woeful. So you're basically only banking on clean sheets. Zabani comes with 0 goals, 0 assists, pretty terrible expected goals and assists, and has the same expected goals conceded of Senesi of 1.61 goals per game across the season, which doesn't really fill me with confidence. I'm still trying to focus on attacking defending players, as those clean sheets are very few and far between and hard to come by. So I think I'm probably going to punt on Senesi's slightly better attacking threat and hope that he doesn't get back-to-back yellow cards in the next 2 fixtures. Now, if he does go out and get back-to-back yellow cards and misses the second game in the double, that will be pretty annoying, but that will mean that he will miss the second game of the double in game week 28, and then also be suspended for the game in game week 29, in which I am free hitting. And so I would get him back in game week 30, having served his suspension, and he will be useful to me moving forward. So I think that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to punt on the fact that Senesi doesn't go getting yellow cards and comes away with some sort of attacking threat across the next 3 fixtures. Now, ideally, I'd like to reduce my Newcastle exposure, as I am still tripled up on the Newcastle defense, which I brought in on my wildcard in game week 19. But unfortunately, neither Dan Burn or Sven Botman provide me enough cash that I'm looking for in order to buy Salah and Son back into my team. So just quickly on Newcastle, Eddie Howe chose to bench Dan Burn for Livramento in order to try and man-mark Saka out of the game in the Arsenal fixture last weekend. However, it didn't work out too well, as Livramento still got burned for pace by Saka, and Saka looked very comfortable in dealing with Livramento, coming away with another double-digit return Saka has just been on absolute fire across the last 5 game weeks. 4 double-digit returns in 5 game weeks, with a 9-pointer being the only non-double-digit return, and that was against Liverpool at home. So, I don't know what Eddie Howe was doing there. I mean, sure, try to man-mark Saka out of the game, but you really need to put 2 men onto Saka if you're going to do that. He did sub off Livramento and brought Dan Burn on for a cameo for the last 17 minutes of the match, and actually picked me up an assist for Newcastle's only a goal, which wrecked the Arsenal clean sheet, proving that both of these 2 Newcastle lads, Botman and Burn, can still get attacking returns even in the toughest fixtures. Now, Botman and Burn both have very good set-piece threat, both very tall, good with their head, and get forward for all of the set pieces, but Burn does sometimes get forward up the pitch as well and delivers crosses into the box, which is how he earned his assist in game week 26. However, my investment into the Newcastle defence in game week 19 was with some hope that Newcastle would find their defensive prowess once their fixture schedule eased. However, it did not at all transpire that way. So Newcastle's schedule has been pretty lax for a little while, and their defense is still terrible. And so I do want to downgrade my Newcastle defensive investment, but unfortunately, this week is not the week in which I will be doing it, and it will be Pedro Porro who will be making way for me. Now, Porro missed out game week 25 through a muscle injury and is still currently flagged in FPL with a 50% chance of playing. Now, Tottenham's clean sheet prospects haven't been very strong. They haven't been as bad as Newcastle's, to be fair, with Newcastle sitting about bottom across the league for defensive clean sheets. But they themselves, this is Spurs, have only kept 1 clean sheet since game week 10. That's a long time ago. And with Maddison back in the team, Pedro Porro's set pieces have somewhat diminished. He is still taking some, but Maddison is taking a lot more of the set piece duty. Porro still does come with a lot of open play threat, and if I did not need the funds out of Porro, I'd be more than happy to hold on to him. But he is pretty expensive for what he's currently offering. 5.7 million when compared to the prices of all the other defensive options this season is a lot of money to be investing in a defender with that has very poor chances at clean sheet. So this week I will be selling Pedro Porro for Senesi as my main move. And just finally on Bruyne Solanke, who missed out the FA Cup match entirely with a surprise injury to his knee. Now, the current reports are that he'll need assessment ahead of the Burnley fixture excuse me, in order to see whether he can play or not. Now, to me, this doesn't sound too serious, but we will have to wait and see what comes out in the presses. Now, with Bournemouth doubling next week and Solanke, if he is back fit and ready, being probably the standout captain for game week 28, if he's only going to miss 1 week or it looks like it's not too severe, I will probably just hold on to Solanke this week through game week 27 and play Garnacho off the bench against Man City. Now, this is not ideal, obviously. Man City is probably one of the worst games that Garnacho could be coming up against, but Garnacho did actually have some pretty decent chances to score last weekend against Fulham. One shot he took was saved by the outstretched dive from Leno, And there was another shot that Garnacho took that left Leno rooted to the spot. He was completely beaten, but his shot was actually cleared by a defender. So Garnacho is, well, I said last week in the video that he looks like the second most likely player in the United team to score a goal behind Højlund. Now, Højlund is currently out injured, and so that basically puts Garnacho at the top of the list of our best shot at a player who's looking in form and likely to score at the moment. And in a derby match, pretty much anything can happen. So unless we find out Solanke is out for weeks on weeks on weeks, I will be holding on to Solanke. But if we do find out that he's out for an extended period of time, I may need to reassess my options. However, I do not think I'll be selling him for a hit this weekend, as I'm holding Solanke currently only for the game week 28 double, and once that is done, I will most likely switch back to a 3-5-2 formation, selling Solanke in the process of doing that. And so if I was to sell Solanke for a hit this week, it would be for a very cheap forward in order to start moving towards that 3-5-2 formation. And that hit is not at all worth it. I'd just be more inclined to play Garnacho off the bench against Man City rather than a very cheap striker option in replacement of Dominic Solanke. Alright, that wraps up this video. So remember to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And until next time, I will catch you again shortly. Cheers.